So I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about this idea of how we go forward morally and the difference between the idea of individualistic morality, which very much in favor of, and rules morality, which I don't really like. I mean, it doesn't sit well with me. And yet, if you live in a chaotic, lower class neighborhood where the social fabric has fallen apart, the rules can be a very, very powerful guide for what you're going to do. Even little rules that seem simple, like the Catholic Church telling you what to eat on Fridays, can be very salutary. They can be very helpful. And then you have people like me who say, no, you've got to use God and go forward. And it suddenly occurred to me that one of the greatest passages in all of Western literature deals with exactly this question. I'm often asked, because I'm a novelist, I'm often asked what my favorite novel is, and I can't answer that because I have so many favorites. But the novel that has changed my life more than any other was Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky was as close a thing to a seer as there was in literature. I mean, he saw communism coming 50 years away. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He saw the death of God coming. And in Crime and Punishment, he was responding to Nietzsche before Nietzsche ever wrote anything. He may have written things, but he hadn't published things. What Nietzsche basically said was, God is dead, morality is now relative. All we can do is find the genealogy of morals, find out where our morals come from. And the left has basically been following that and turned it into the philosophy of relativism and multiculturalism. And Dostoevsky wrote a novel in which a guy basically decided to become the Nietzschean Superman before there was such a thing, and to kill somebody. And he discovers that no, in fact, he has violated the moral code that is in the universe. What Kant said there are two great realities, the starry sky above and the moral law within. And Dostoevsky was putting that forward. When I read that book, I was 19 years old the first time I read it. I remember that it changed the direction of my soul. It was like a big ship turning in a different direction because I was surrounded by relativists. Relativism was on the rise. Nietzscheism was on the rise. The new criticism was on the rise. And I thought, you know what? These guys are wrong. These guys are wrong. And that ultimately, 30 years down the road, it ultimately resulted in my becoming a Christian, and which also is what happened to Dostoevsky. But Dostoevsky wrote another great book called The Brothers Karamazov. It's a harder read, and I had to read it 3 times before I actually understood it. It was the third time when I thought, oh, I get this book, In The Brothers Karamazov, there is a passage which you can go out and buy separately, actually, called The Grand Inquisitor. Have you ever read this, The Grand Inquisitor? Oh, man, it is some piece of work. It's better if you read it in context, but one of the characters, a very cynical character, stops the story of the Brothers Karamazov and tells a story within the story. And I'm not going to read it to you because it's too long, but I will just give it to you very quickly. It takes place during the Inquisition in Spain. And the Grand Inquisitor, they're burning people at the stakes. And the Grand Inquisitor has just finished in Seville, I think it is. He's just finished burning a bunch of heretics. Jesus, the Christ, comes back to earth and starts performing miracles. And the people recognize him right away, and they start coming to him with their health problems and everything. And in fact, a little girl who has died is brought to him, and he raises her, as he does in the Gospels. He raises her from the dead. And the Grand Inquisitor is walking by, and he sees Jesus doing this, knows exactly who it is, and has him arrested and brought before the Inquisition and condemned to be burned to the stake. And he goes into the prison cell, and the Grand Inquisitor confronts Jesus, and he says, you had no right to come back. You have no right to add anything to what's already in the Bible, and you are getting in the way of the great work the church does, stopping people from being free, because what you brought them was freedom, and you did it when you declined the temptations of Satan in the desert. In the desert, Jesus has 3 temptations. The devil comes to him and says, if you're the Son of Man, if you're the Son of God, change these stones to bread. And he says, no, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So he refuses to change the stones to bread. So the devil says, all right, if you are the Son of Man, prove it. Throw yourself off a cliff and let God's angels come and do it. And Jesus says, no, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And Satan says, all right, well, here's what you do. If you will worship me, I will give you all the kingdoms of the world. You can see them out in front of you. And Jesus basically says, pound sand to Satan. I don't think, maybe that's not a direct translation from the Greek, but that's basically what he says. And the Grand Inquisitor says to Jesus, all people want is bread. They will all you had to do was change the stones to bread, and the people would have been served. That they will sell their lives for bread. They will sell their conscience for bread. They will sell everything if you just give them bread. And he's talking about communism. He sees communism. Dostoevsky sees communism coming down the line. He says, when you refuse to throw yourself off the cliff and prove that you're the Son of God, you took away from people somebody to worship. That's the other thing they want. They want to worship somebody. They want to throw their conscience to somebody else. They want to make a saint of somebody else. And you refuse to become that person. And you kept insisting that the people should be free in their conscience. And when you refuse to take over the kingdoms of the world, you refuse the third thing. Let me read you. This is like one sentence. The Grand Inquisitor says, all that man seeks on earth is someone to bow down to, someone to take over his conscience, and a means for uniting everyone at last into a common, concordant, and incontestable anthill. For the need for universal union is the third and last torment of men. Men want something to be true for everybody, and they want somebody to be in control of everybody. They want something to come together. And Jesus, by refusing those three temptations, has forced the people to be free. And what the Grand Inquisitor says, yes, there are maybe 10,000 people who will benefit from that freedom. But what about all the millions? We as the church who serve Satan, we are on the side of Satan. We serve those millions. And yes, we take away their lives and we take away their freedom, but we give them what they want. We give them bread, we give them somebody to worship, and we give them a universal truth that they can refer to at all times. Dostoevsky was he was a Christian, but he was not easy on the Roman Catholic Church. And this is a story that's told by a very nefarious character, and so it's not an authoritative story. At the end of the story, the Grand Inquisitor says to Jesus, he pardons him. He says, I'm not going to burn you at the stake. I'm going to let you go, but get out of here. Get out of town. And Jesus leans forward and he kisses the Grand Inquisitor and he leaves. And one of the last lines of the story is something like, the kiss burned in the Inquisitor's heart, but he did not change his opinions. It's a very, so it doesn't come to any conclusion, but it's a very beautiful picture of the quandary that we're in. We are, social media plays to this. It plays to your outrage. Why does it play to your outrage? Because outrage makes you feel virtuous. Outrage does exactly the opposite of what Jesus told you to do if you wanted to be free. Jesus told you not to look at the sins of the other person, but to look at your own sins, to look at yourself first. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Take the plank out of your eye before you attack the mote in another man's eye. All you get on Twitter, all you get on social media, all you get on Facebook all day long is the mote in the other guy's eye, because that outrage is addictive, because it makes you feel virtuous when you are not. And that is the way we're being deceived. We're being deceived by this constant, perpetual outrage over some of the things are outrageous, some of them are not. The constant outrage, which makes you feel good about yourself. And we're constantly looking for our guys to be saints and their guys to be devils. And we are all of us, fallen short of the glory of God. And this was why Melania Trump yesterday was, to me, a shining star. And when I say this, when I finish saying this, you're going to be so ticked off at me, you won't believe it. Melania Trump came forward to show the new Christmas decorations. Just show the 12, cut 12, just the decorations themselves first. Can you keep my mic on for a minute? Because the decorations themselves are just beautiful. And she really, she's got a great taste. And obviously, you can see her walking through this. It's just absolutely spectacular. That is a gingerbread White House. It really is beautiful. And there's a fantastic creche in there, which I have to say, compares. Look at this. It really is nice. So she comes out to show this. And by the way, this is in comparison to the Obama White House tree, which show number 13. So it had Mao, who murdered tens of millions of people, was on the tree. And cut number 14 is Obama on Mount Rushmore. He's in Obama's head. So the Obama tree was about Obama. The Melania's tree is about the White House. But the most touching thing was she came out to greet these children. And I don't know what they represented, some organization. And she walks out to greet these children. And just watch this quick cut.
Oh. I was the first one. I got from the first one. Yeah, I gave her a hug. It's beautiful. It's like an angel.
She comes out, and if you couldn't hear it, the kid says to her, "Are you the first lady?" And it turns to another kid and says, "She seriously looks like an angel." And then she comes out to shake their hands. They all run into her arms. I think Melania is doing a great job as the First Lady. I am so proud to have her representing me. And every time I bring this up, especially on the Never Trump right, they say to me, this is a woman who posed nude in lesbian kind of pornographic pictures, and that she was almost certainly what's the word? A gold digger. Obviously she was a gold digger. Who would marry Donald Trump except for his money, right? Think about it for a minute. Would you, ladies, be honest, would you marry Donald Trump? And there's an apocryphal story that she once said, well, yeah, I married him for his money, but he married me for my looks. So what's the diff? I don't know whether that story is true or not. And so whenever I mention that, her past, the people who love her get angry at me. And whenever I mention what a great job she's doing, the people who hate her and who hate Trump bring up that stuff. But to me, it's that stuff that makes her so beautiful. It's that stuff that makes this so amazing, that she did those kind of cheap pornographic pictures, that she probably married Trump in some sense for his money, and yet she has elevated herself into this office where this kid just had a vision of an angel coming out of that Christmas tree. That's what you're aiming for. That is because this is who we all are. We have all fallen short of the glory of God. And until you realize that, until you stop the outrage, until you take a look at yourself, then you start to realize what kind of complicated moral decisions we have. I'm not hitting anybody for trying to keep a vote in the Senate over punishing some guy for what he did 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 10 minutes ago. I think these are complex moral questions that each of us has to judge by standing before God as who we really are and what we've really done and understanding ourselves and then making the best moral choice you have. Democracy is a mess. Democracy is always a mess, and it sullies everyone who touches it because you are free to make the decision. This is what the Grand Inquisitor was protesting against. He was protesting against the fact that when you become free, when you make the decisions of who is going to be powerful and who isn't, then you are going to be touched by the dirt of the world. And I do not think that elevating yourself above that and pretending to be better than it and stepping away from it and making the choices look simple, I do not think that that is a moral choice.